It's finally here, and while critics seem to be giving it a pretty harsh time for not fully understanding the game itself, both non-fans and fans of the franchise are overwhelmingly pleased with the newest entry to the Sonic the Hedgehog series, Sonic Frontiers. In this review, I'll be going over the basics and my overall opinion of the game. Now, while this is a non-spoiler review, I will be showing off gameplay from both a more advanced portion of the game and from the beginning of the game. But don't worry, I've cut out all story bits and have completely neglected showing off anything regarding to the story. So it's just simple gameplay of the game. So without further ado, let's check out what I think is Sonic Team's latest masterpiece. Where do I even begin? When this game was first announced, I was honestly not a fan of it. A lot of people compared it to Breath of the Wild, which at the time, it was pretty understandable. But me myself, not being a big fan of open world games like Breath of the Wild, as I felt it was too overwhelming for me, and even taking the smallest break from the game left me bewildered on what I was doing or what I needed to do when returning, needless to say, I wasn't happy that this seemed to have been the new direction Sonic Team was taking with Sonic when it came to the open zone concept. But like many others, as soon as Gamescom came around, something changed. I don't know what it was, but looking at the footage of the game and just looking at how fun it looked to run around as Sonic in such an open environment gave me adventure vibes. And if you know me, I'm a big fan of the first adventure game. It's my favorite in the franchise after all these years, and needless to say, I think I enjoy Frontiers much more than Adventure, which is very shocking, even for me to say out loud. I will say though, just watching someone play this game isn't enough to fully sell someone on the game. This is certainly a game you have to play for yourself to understand why people like it so much. Yes, I know watching someone play the game makes it look like a barren wasteland with little to do in it, but as you'll see in this upcoming gameplay that I recorded myself, I try my best to show just how much there is to do from the beginning of the game. Again, this being non-spoiler, I have to cut out anything and everything related to the story, or anything that might be surprising. The following gameplay starts off from the beginning of the first island and shows me exploring it, as well as solving some puzzles. Enjoy. Now, like I said, watching the gameplay can't fully sell someone on the game, and my gameplay most certainly doesn't do it justice, but looking at it and seeing how much there is, so many various different paths to take to find collectibles, enemies sprawled out across the open field, puzzles being close enough to each other that you don't have to spend too much time in between running from one to another, you really get a sense for how much fun it is to play the game. That's what really sold me on the whole experience overall. Going into this with somewhat low expectations, but coming out of it with a sense of not wanting to put the game down. Even after beating it once, I'm still wanting to play it more and more, given that I'm already doing a stream for it on the channel, which I'll likely still be continuing, so if you're interested in that, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell. But why is that? Why do I feel like this is the best Sonic game ever, and how can it truly just beat out everything that Sonic Team has published in the past recent years? Well, to answer those questions, it's just really fun to play. And like I said, not getting into story territory, the story is definitely for those who've been with the franchise for a long while. There are so many different references and surprise mentions that left me screaming, "Wait, what?" each time one dropped. And while I know a reference fest is something everyone gets tired of hearing every once in a while, the new direction that these characters have and the new voices that come from them, along with the new tone for Roger Craig Smith, which is personally one of my favorite takes from him in a long time, it just really brings these characters to life. And Ian Flynn's writing does something that I feel like the writing of the games have failed to do for the past decade, and that's make these characters actually feel like characters. Like, don't get me wrong, every other game before this tried to do this, but they all just kept saying snarky jokes to one another, or sometimes the lines just felt like they didn't fit the character at all, or that the character didn't feel represented properly. But with this, and without spoiling anything, I can for sure say that I was very pleased with the characterization of them in this game. It honestly felt like playing an entry from the Sonic IDW comic series. Alongside that, there are just so many levels of customization. Not talking about DLC, since DLC only gives you access to the adventure boots and gloves if you bought the digital deluxe edition of the game, and the Sonic Adventure 2 soap shoes, which you can get for free by signing up for the Sonic Frontiers newsletter on the website, link provided down below. And not to mention the upcoming Monster Hunter DLC that lets Sonic sport armor from that game as well, and includes a new minigame where Sonic can cook? Sonic, what are you doing? The wildlife is meant to be protected. But DLC is not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about actual control customization. This is the first game ever in the Sonic franchise where you can customize the way Sonic controls, from his startup speed to his turning, how much speed he can get from boosting, camera speed, camera angle, camera distance, and so much more. You can even change the amount of influence of height you get from a bounce, making it accessible to anyone to just find their favorite way to make Sonic control, or just a madman and either turn all the dials down or max it out completely. It's completely up to you, and that's what I love about this game the most. You can play it and beat it however you want to. Oh, and don't let me forget to mention the drop dash. You can utilize it if you want, but it really doesn't add anything too interesting to the game. Sometimes I even forget that I have the drop dash, to be honest, and it's much faster just boosting where you need to go, especially when you collect max rings and get a more powerful and quicker boost of speed for Sonic. Now let's talk about the combat. I won't spend too much time on this again because there's a lot of cool moves and combos that you can do with it. Upgrading the skill tree costs skill points, which you can get from collecting skill pieces from enemies or from silo. You can even buy these pieces from Big when you're fishing with them, which I'll get into more about fishing a little later. While the combat may come off as simple, and while this may come off as disappointment to some, I don't have much of an issue with it, as I do feel that Frontiers, again, is the blueprint or the stepping stone for future Sonic, and this game being mostly centered towards pleasing the general audience over majority of the Sonic fanbase when it comes to gameplay. It would make more sense for the combat to be more automated and less difficult for new people getting into the game. As you explore the island, you'll come across various different items, such as memory tokens to help progress the story, portal gears for unlocking cyberspace levels, Chaos Emerald Vault keys for unlocking Chaos Emeralds, Cocoa for trading into the Elder to max out speed and ring stats, and red power seeds alongside blue defense seeds that can be traded to the Hermit to max out power and defense. As you explore the island, you can gain these key items from either defeating enemies, finding treasure marked locations and side looping around them, completing cyberspace levels, or fishing with Big the Cat, my personal favorite way of gaining finding the key items. Fishing with Big the Cat is probably one of my most favorite things to come back to the Sonic franchise, and while it is just Sonic fishing, just having Big there to help him learn how to fish and sit alongside you while you're fishing, it's just such a treat, especially with that lo-fi song in the background, which they cleverly named Fishing Vibes. It truly is a vibe. Fishing costs purple coins, which you can find throughout the island or during certain events in the game known as Starfall, a small slots event that can be played on random nights, which allow you to gain even more purple coins for fishing with Big. And if you think they're scarce, I can for sure tell you by the end of my first playthrough, I had at least 500 purple coins to fish with Big, so they're definitely common and really easy to get. Now, all this high praise for such a fantastic game, and I can't even talk about some of my favorite parts of the game without going into spoiler territory. There are at least two things I have a major gripe with, but something that can be easily fixed as Sonic Team fleshes out this formula going forward with the future of Sonic, which is something I really hope they do. Issue number 1. The cyberspace stages. They're fun, but there's just something completely off about how Sonic feels to play in these levels. He just feels very slow at times, and sometimes it just feels like you don't have much control over what he does when going airborne. While this game can be clunky at times, the only time cyberspace actually feels fun is when you're going through levels that are more open and less linear, or completely 2D. Issue number 2 are the forced platforming sections in Open Zone. Now, while this isn't much of an issue on the first two islands, this becomes much of a greater issue on the third island, as it is the biggest of them all. The small platforming segments that you come across on the first two just feel like they fit right in with the fluidness of the open zone, never really feeling like they break that immersion of going from point A to point B. But when it comes to the third island, they just feel forced, and at times you can run into them completely unexpectedly, considering how alike everything looks on the third island. But those two issues aside, the good most certainly outweighs the bad, and while at times it can be frustrating, I still find myself coming back and loving this game even more just because it's genuinely the most fun I've found in a video game in such a long time, and especially a Sonic one. So big props to Sonic Team for crafting this game. I really want to see this concept fleshed out more, with more open areas, more playable characters, just more of everything presented here. They are in the step for a great direction for Sonic, and alongside the amazing music that this game has, never failing to give Sonic a fantastic soundtrack to listen to, I'm certain Sonic has a great future ahead of him continuing down this path. And with that, that's what I think of Sonic Frontiers. Let me know what your thoughts on Sonic Frontiers are in the comments down below. Have you beat the game yet? Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe for more content that I'll post whenever I can, and I'll catch you guys